All right, hello again. How you doing? In the last video, I talked about one crisis at a time. This one I want to pick up on a deeper subject because I got a ways to walk before I can call it good, I think. I want to talk about botting and like the use of AI in Eve Echoes. It's not as simple as like bots are bad, because NetEase actually sanctions certain uses of AI, so long as it's through their system with those purple cones and the advanced AI option. Folks will farm all the time with their battleships or fancy big old nice. They got it for miners too. I don't know, and like, it's fine with NetEase so long as you foot the bill. So long as you pay them, they'll let you do passive play, which, like, that's fine. That's good. The economy in game actually kind of needs that. It's like not enough people are doing the passive play thing, which is why a lot of the materials prices for planetary materials are higher than expected. You don't get a lot of people who focus on, exploration or planetary manipulation when there's a lot more active pew pew, quote unquote, winning the game PvE available. And like, I think they could actually stand to benefit from trying to monetize more botting, more of the stuff that people try and automate away. So like, a couple ideas I kicked around. I talk a lot more about this in the book, but one of the big ideas that I got recently was the idea of cameras, gate cams. Folks will, let me see if I can survive this intersection real quick. Does he live? Yes, he lives. Ha 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 ha. Thanks for playing Frogger with me. So gate cameras. One of the common complaints in any discussion about bots in Eve Echoes is like burner accounts that maybe they have a mega, maybe they don't. At the very least, they have usually a Slasher 2 equivalent frigate, something small, cheap, and easy to replace that just sits 1,000 kilometers off of a key in nullsec. And the way they do that 1,000 kilometers off, is they set autopilot, disconnect at a certain time, and reconnect. And what that does, because of the nature of gates, it will align the ship to whatever the next destination is in the autopilot, and then warp them in at 1,000 kilometers off whatever the object is. So in the case of gate camps, it's 1,000 kilometers off the gate. And like, one of my favorite things to do, one of my favorite sources of joy, is debate fights. If you get a Rifter or a Slasher or something small, stupid, and disposable, like a Tall War. I love the Tall War more than any other destroyer out there. You get a Tall War and you slow boat as just as fast as you can to the gate. You can bait a fight. I've had people come try and chase me around with battleships and big old expensive toys, which is overkill and really easy to dodge. I've had people come and give me actual good fights in like Asteros and faction frigates, which surviving those is always really fun, especially if you can, tweak their nose and jump off. That's one of my favorite things. But like, that's really good gameplay. And NetEase should embrace that. Give corporations the ability to install cameras on nullsec gates. And like, these should be relatively disposable installations, right? They should be the equivalent of a ship. I vote battlecruiser to keep them from being too cheap and easy to replace, but not so expensive that folks, just use the current frigate in place. And I think those installations they shouldn't have hull timers like bases. I think NetEase has noticed that hull timers and a lot of the buildup, the bloat of just holding space is causing more, passive play than I think they want. Like, I think of it like this. So you get one outpost per faction, and each of the outposts has its own, profile, its own weapon installations potentially, or like ways of upgrading them, whatever, just like a capsuleer outpost, but no timers. It's just shield, armor, hull, with the 2000 damage per tick cap on, and enough meat to basically make it so your average cruiser at 500 damage per second up can chunk them down over a period of 2 hours or something like that. And like, you can tune that. Folks who can consistently get 2,000 damage per tick, like, if they can whittle it down over the course of an hour trying to bait a response, that seems fair. Especially since I hope that these sort of disposable installations would cost maybe 200 million ISK or so. That seems reasonable. Also, they should be player manufactured, and like, they should drop fuel on destruction, and the fuel would be used for any sort of automated defenses. I believe those automated defenses should be limited to missiles or drones, with players getting the option of, equipping them with either of the two. And then the automated defenses, through fuel burn, it just targets whatever lasted DPS to it, and then fires off a shot and then resets. So real limited AI, but anybody in the corporation should be able to access that camera. And you could have cool names like for them, like let's see, Argos. But no, what's it? I can't remember if Argos is. It's already in use, right? There's the destroyer, the Argos, but for the Argonauts, right? It's the ship for the Argonauts. What's the other? Io. You could have one with a Greek theme, Io, which is where the peacock gets its eyes. Hello, little one. Look at me making friends. You could have a whole bunch of different names, not a whole bunch, but like one for each faction, right? And they each have their own little nuances. Some are, I would expect the Minmatar one to be fast, cheap, and easy, right? Easily destroyed, but a lot more aggressive, or something along those lines. Like, tune it, make it interesting, allow any player to have those, and any member of the corporation to tune into those specific cameras. Bada bing, bada boom. One less need, not necessarily need, but one less unfulfilled niche for NetEase to potentially exploit. And like, it should require an Omega to install a camera, but now you don't need to create a secondary account. You can just have it attached to one of your existing characters. And like, you could throw skills onto there for some reason. It's a touch point for a lot more expansion. And I would hope that this sort of passive play endorsement would extend to mining as well. And like, this is something I talk about in the book a lot more at the very tail end, when I start proposing like systems and gameplay options, and like, if I was a designer, what I would do. But yeah, that's sort of what I envision for a potential mining installation. Would have the same sort of features as a camera. It'd be a disposable installation. So no timers. Beautiful magpies. No timers, just shield, armor, hull. One variation for each of the big four empires. and then you load it with ventures, venture 2s, venture 3s, whatever class of venture and equipment you want to field. You basically set up a fit and then provide in a hopper one of each of them. And over the course of a period of time, like you could have that either burn purple cones or fuel, ideally fuel. I envision these sort of installations as being easier to attack and field, because the goal isn't to like replace players, it's to provide an alternative option for people who would rather be passive in their management of characters. So like those ventures would go out into a random belt and they would actually mine a random ore until their whole hold is full, which like this would actually benefit cheaper ventures more than others because you get more exposure to different variations on ore, making the Venture 3 still the best of the bunch for any free-to-play player, but also like the workhorse of any Omega. At least, you know, any Omega that doesn't pay for Omega. If you're paying to play, then like by all means, get your Rorquals and your big fancy boats. But having the option for passive play is a niche that NetEase could totally exploit. Exploit's the wrong word. Endorse. Similar things could be done with PvE, but I don't like that. I think PvE should be, you know, they've already automated that, and like they've kind of set themselves up for whale country. But for PvE and the like, I talk about that, like how I would propose to endorse more passive play and put more targets in the field for people to actually engage with that don't necessarily need pilots behind them. Like they should pull pilots. They should be targets to defend, not necessarily installations that are too hard to aggress on. More disposable installations means more gameplay, but they shouldn't require, you know, corporation outposts and things like that. They should be deployable. You should be able to forward deploy a mining installation. You should be able to forward deploy a camera. Like, they should be disposable enough that you can use them aggressively, but also sturdy enough that teamwork, having at least 2 players engage with them, will yield more of a combat effect. Like I've rambled long enough about like how NetEase should embrace botting, since they already have, and like how they should continue in that direction. But like from the market perspective, passive play and the bots themselves aren't an issue. Like the market's already flooded at the extremes, just from the whales and from the stagnant demand situation. Nobody's building cruisers, nobody's building destroyers, nobody's building frigates, because there isn't a need for them. If you had these temporary or these burnable installations, and they required hoppers full of ships, and I'm just talking about mining and cameras as sort of the gateway drug. But if you had, let's say, a ratting installation, it could, you know, deploy 1 or 2 NPC PvE scenarios. That feels like it would be too server heavy. So really just like you have a hopper full of destroyers, you have a hopper full of frigates or their equivalents, and maybe it plays into how carriers operate. Maybe it doesn't. I would prefer it doesn't. That way there's more actual industry draw, and there's potential for ships to drop and people to like have to sell those on the market. Because that's the only reason why the markets are so open, like why it's so easy for an alpha player to get into industry right now. There's no competition, which means it's easy, which means it's not as fun. But like through the use of automation, you could create demand for smaller scale ships, which would allow whales to, field these automated platforms and then have sort of an ecosystem where they demand the creation of ships. They compete with alphas for the creation of those ships, which that competition will lower the prices and create niches for industrialists like yours truly to come in. Like botting and passive play are not some sort of boogeyman or monolith to be afraid of or to oppose. It's an opportunity for both free-to-play players and then the two grades of Omega, because you're starting to see that gradation of, well, not starting to, NetEase has been working on that for a minute, the two different variations on Omega to kind of like suck as much money out of people as possible. And that's, that's good design. But they need that circle of life, otherwise they're not going to get new players coming, and they're not going to get people like wanting to spend money to maintain those sorts of passive options when they could just use alternate characters, right? But yeah, I'm not going to say let me know what you think in the comments, but I kind of did. I'm curious to see what y'all think. I'll keep asking about this in Gromeyer's Discord and other places, but real life is a lot. So that'll be my focus moving forward. Anyway, thank you. I hope you have a nice day. Bye.